Are you ready to get real? Are you ready to get real? Welcome to real estate, the world's loneliest career, where you're always out of balance, unfulfilled, the role models are fake, the numbers unattainable, and you're just supposed to be and do it all. Join self-made millionaire real estate agents, wives, moms, and business owners as we level up, learn from special guests, and elevate and disrupt an entire industry through real education our way.
Good morning, everybody. We are so excited to be here this morning with a good friend of mine, Dirk Parsons.
Nice.
He's a certified master inspector with DTI Property Inspections, and we are going to talk all things home inspections, which we've never done before. So I'm super excited because I think this will be very fun and very, very informative. So how long have you been an inspector?
I've been doing it for about 8.5 years. So a long time. It's almost 5,000 houses.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's a lot. Wow. That's a lot.
It is. I've seen everything.
Yes.
Well, really, truly not everything, but pretty close.
Pretty damn close to it. Yeah. So I think like to start, we saw this unbelievable statistic the other day that said that I think it was something between 80% and 90% of all real estate agents in the United States this year haven't sold a house yet.
Wow.
So, our mission on our podcast has always been training and teaching and empowerment. So I think to start, let's talk about, the point of an inspection and how to deal with it the best way as an agent on either the buy side or the listing side. And then let's have some horror stories at the end because that would be really fun. So let's start with like the buyer's agent side. So walk us through what you think the most important things are that an agent should be looking for if they're there or not there at the inspection.
The first thing is it's kind of hard as a buyer's agent. I do well. As a matter of fact, the last house you and I did was 7,000 square feet or something like that. So took a long time. There was two of us on there, but it still took quite a while. But one thing is, some buyers insist that their buyer's agent insists their buyers come. Some tell them to come at the end. You can do it however you want. As an inspector, I prefer if they're there, they kind of let me do my thing.
Yep.
And you've always been really good about that. But there are some agents that say you have to follow him the whole time. It's very distracting. It's hard for me to do my job. But the biggest thing is to prepare your buyer for things that are outside of our scope. Again, the last house that you and I did had that super steep roof that you knew no way I could walk that roof. Yeah. So there's, you want to prepare your buyers for that. Now, there's options about that. You can always have people come out and look at the roof. Roofers will come do that. But sometimes I will have a newer agent look at me and go, "Why can't you walk on the roof?" Well, it's this steep. There's no way I can walk that roof. So just preparing your buyers for what is in the scope of the inspection and out of the scope as well.
So if someone's like never been to an inspection before with their client, how does the flow of things work?
Well, everybody does it a little bit differently. There are a few things that when I'm training inspectors and teaching inspectors, there's a few things. You can kind of do it however you want, but generally the outside goes first. You get there, best if the seller is not there. That doesn't always happen either.
That happened at the last one we were at.
Well, that's right. She came back, yeah.
Yes.
So we start outside, do the outside roof, all that stuff, then move into the kitchen, and then I go to the top down. I run all the water, make sure everything's done, because if you go in the basement or crawl space first, you don't know if there's a leak. And so you want to start at the top, work your way down, attic, roof, all that stuff, and then finish down in the basement. An average inspection, 2 hours, 2.5 hours or so. Of course, the one that you and I did, the last one was pretty big. But it's important to prepare your buyers for not only the process, but how long it's going to take. If they come, I've had people say, "Oh, they said it was going to take 45 minutes." I'm like, I can't do the outside in 45 minutes. So, and I'm pretty fast, but yeah, it's well, just like any kind of business, it's managing expectations. Knowing that your client is aware of how this is going to go.
Angela, so you brought up something that I feel like is like a hot topic of conversation that I see, and we have these big Facebook groups with hundreds of thousands of agents all across the
Oh,
United
yeah.
States, and they're always debating things in there. I've always gone to my inspections, always. Like, it's really, unless it's an emergency or I'm out of town and my clients know I'm not there. There's a lot of agents that are like, I absolutely will not be there for it. Do you go to yours, Ange, or what do you do?
I do. If I personally can't be there, then I have one of the agents that I've trained will be there. But as a listing agent, I'm constantly seeing agents not showing up and not having their buyers there, or their buyers out of state. And that's when deals blow up, is when no one shows up from that side and they get this laundry list of items that they think is super serious, but it's really not. And then, somebody wants to send you 40 pages of inspection items because they weren't there. And, that's when the bad stuff usually happens with the contract. So if I know that the other agent isn't going to be there, sometimes I'll go. So at least someone's there.
I don't understand like that line of thinking. Like, I don't know if it's, maybe other states have different rules. I don't actually know, but I don't understand why you wouldn't want to be there. I mean, first of all, I feel like it's such a huge part of the transaction from your, I mean, when you're showing a house to a client, they're in there for what, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, right? So the inspection is really their time to get super acquainted with the house and measure things and fall in love. Like, I don't understand where that line of thinking that you shouldn't go to the inspection comes from. I think it's
laziness.
weird.
That's where it comes from.
Well, and what's interesting is I had an agent tell me this. It was years ago. I don't remember even who it was, but they said to them it's a liability.
Yes, that's what
They
I've
don't
heard
want
too.
to know what's wrong. They don't want to hear what I say. They just want to get the information from the report. I don't think that's
bullshit.
Yeah, it seems
I mean,
weird to
on
me.
the seller's side, and we'll flip to the seller's side here in a bit, but that could be true on the listing agent side, because technically speaking, at least in Colorado, if you find out anything that's a material fact, then you've got to disclose it, right? So like if you accidentally, found the roof is trashed or, something big like that, as the listing agent, you don't have a choice. You've got to disclose it. But as the buyer's agent, liability wise, I do not understand that
I
argument.
don't understand
I
it
think
either.
the liability not to go.
Right, because to your point, I think, and I talked to another inspector friend of mine, and we came up with 35. 35 is the average number of defects for any house. I don't care if it's brand new or old. Now, I've seen way more than that. I've never seen a perfect house, but if as a buyer, you don't go and your agent doesn't go and you get this report, you're going, holy shit, this house is falling down.
Yeah.
When it's really not. It's just that nobody has explained that. So I agree.
Yeah.
It's,
Because most of the report is stuff that you need to look out for, or homeowner maintenance stuff that might come up in the next 5 years. It's not, oh my God, your house is falling over. But if you have an agent that barely graduated high school trying to, explain that long report with a bunch of legalese, at least my inspectors have a lot of legalese, they can't adequately explain it because they don't understand it themselves because they weren't there. So that's the problem. And then you get this huge inspection list that's asking for, all kinds of dumb shit that, has nothing to do with what the house actually is right now. Or if they even send one at all, they might just send a termination because they have no idea because they weren't there. And then they want to know why their house terminated. Well, it's because you didn't care enough to show up. Like, your contract doesn't stop at signatures. It stops at closing.
Right. And that's what I always tell clients too is, I mean, it's part, and now of course I'm not an agent, but part of the negotiation happens when you get the house under contract. The real negotiation is after inspection. That's when stuff can go really wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
35 items that's interesting. So that's the average number of items that are wrong with the house.
Right.
But out of those 35, like, how many do you think are serious? Like, to me, it's always been roof, HVAC, which is, again, we have a lot of listeners that are newer agents. So HVAC is furnace, air conditioning, water heater.
Heating, ventilation, air conditioning. Yep.
Yeah.
Mechanicals,
Yeah.
Furnace, air conditioner, water heater. Electrical can be a big one. Roof is the biggest, especially here in Colorado, because the joke is how long the roofs last. It's to the next hailstorm, and that and that sounds jokey, but it's true. But yeah, the roof is something nobody sees. They don't see it. They don't know. So it's one of those things that, Yeah, and it also depends on the house too. If you're talking about a 100-year-old house, that's all bets are off when it comes to that. But people care about roof and structure. Those are the two big things.
Yeah.
True structural issues aren't that common. Less than 10% of houses have real structural problems.
Interesting.
But a roof.
What are the things that come up on like every inspection report that you always see that agents tend to blow out of proportion, but are pretty commonplace on pretty much any production built home that you see? Because I know I have a list.
I feel like
Lindsay
I know.
can
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
answer
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Lindsay, start with your list. What do you see on yours all the time?
Mine?
Yeah.
Clean and service the furnace.
Almost
Well,
done.
are you talking about like just stuff that comes up or stuff that blows
Yeah,
up deals?
like install anti-tip bracket on your fucking oven.
On the range, right?
That drives me crazy.
High loop on the dishwasher.
You don't do that to me. Thank you for that. So I would say clean and service the furnace. Roof is questionable. Get an actual roofer out.
Number one. That's number one you're forgetting. And you're going to go, oh my God.
I always feel like there's like a leaky toilet or a leaky sink or a stopped up toilet or a stopped up sink.
Negative grading.
Oh, yes. Yes. Grading.
Almost every inspection outside, there's negative grading where the landscaping sloped toward the foundation. It's just a maintenance thing that nobody ever takes care of. So that's a big one always.
Yeah, which again, for newer listeners, newer agents that are listening, the reason that that's important is like you want water to flow away from the foundation of the house, because if it flows towards the house, that's how you can end up with structural issues. So by negative grading, he just means like, are the rocks, the bushes, whatever outside, like is everything flowing towards the foundation? So yes, that's everywhere.
That's big.
Yes.
And then another one that comes up a lot that people don't understand the difference is cracked concrete. And what people don't realize is any concrete you're standing on, whether it's the driveway, the walkways, the basement floor, the garage floor, everything none of it's structural. Minor cracking, heaving and settling a little bit in those, that's not structural. Now there can be issues that are evidence of structural issues. And as an inspector, that's what I'm looking for. I can't see most of the foundation wall. I'm looking for evidence, for signs. I'm looking for the house to tell me a story that there is things like, some kind of settlement or things like that. But yeah, people say, oh my God, did you see that big crack in the foundation? I'm like, oh my God, how did I miss that? And I go downstairs and it's in the floor. I'm like, that's not a foundation. So
as an agent, if we're walking through a listing as a buyer's agent and we're looking at a house and we see a crack, what should alert us that there might be a potential real issue, a vertical crack, a horizontal crack, something that's separating? What do you typically see when you would say, okay, we need to call in somebody?
That's a great question. And like Lindsay's saying, lateral movement. Like if they're if in the foundation wall, if it's moving this way, then that would be an issue. Another thing, a big difference between vertical and horizontal cracks is vertical cracks generally aren't structural. They happen when the house was curing. They're a lot of things can cause it. So vertical cracks are less scary, especially if they're hairline. Where they get worse is if they start thin and get big at the top. That's an issue. But horizontal cracks, like you mentioned, those are the big ones. What creates that is called hydrostatic pressure. So you've got moisture in the soil on the outside of the foundation wall, and the foundation wall can't support that pressure. So it cracks in the center horizontally and causes the whole wall to bow in. So those almost always, a horizontal crack is a structural issue.
So when you see those little hairlines that come off of like the top of the window frame or the top of the door frame, or like where a drywall seam is, that's
settling.
Any crack like that's going in the report, but I'm not going to say a structural engineer needs to come look at it, because the weakest part of any wall is where there's an opening, right? Where there's a window or a door. So that's where those diagonal cracks always happen. Now, if it's 3/4 of an inch wide, that's a different discussion. But yeah, those kind of things, I'll put them in the report, but they're generally not a sign of anything structural.
What are some of the other things that we should be looking at when we're walking through a house to make sure that what I don't want to happen for a lot of agents is they get to inspection and then they find out this house is a gigantic dumpster fire? They should know that beforehand. So what are some of those things they can do to help mitigate that from happening?
Wait, hang on. I want to go back 1 second on concrete, but that was, excellent, awesome question. Concrete, like you said, like I think no one knows this. Angela and I grew up in the new home sales world, so we were trained a little bit differently, but we were always told, like you said, and I think that's super important to be clear on, flat work, concrete flat work, which is like the front porch, the back porch, the garage slab, the driveway, isn't structural.
Correct.
It's
No.
just the walls of the foundation.
Right. And a lot of people, I mean, I had a concrete guy tell me one time that there's two kinds of concrete in the world: concrete that's cracked and concrete that's going to crack. And that's really the way it is, because you put something that doesn't move, concrete, on something that does, the earth, and it will crack.
That's why they put separator lines in all of it, because they know it's going to crack, so that you only have to replace a certain portion of it instead of all of it. So that's
Yes,
what they're for.
it's exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So like Angela asked, what do we, when you're showing a house, what should you be looking at? That's such a good question.
That is a really good question, because Angela, like you said, there are times I walk into a house and I look at the agent like, really? You didn't notice this? But we've all done so many houses. It's easier for us just from sheer volume. But one of the big things, some of the big things, first of all, old furnaces. You can tell by standing 15 feet away, usually, if it's really old. If the house is built in 89 and the furnace looks old, it's original. Just keep that in your mind. Doesn't have to be a deal breaker, but keep it in your mind. Another big one that we see, there's 3 types of electrical panels that are fire hazards. I was teaching a real estate continuing education class a few weeks ago, and the broker said, what's interesting is I talked to an electrician. They said it's not really a big deal anymore. And I'm like, that the history shows that it is, so I'm going with that still. But the biggest one's called Federal Pacific. If you open the panel, it's got breakers that have colored stickers on them, like red, orange, and green stickers, and the breakers are vertical. So that's a fire hazard. I've seen it with my own eyes. I was doing a flip, and my cousin and I were partners in the deal. He cut through a wire with a saw, and it sparked, and nothing happened. So if it kept arcing like that, it would have burned the house down. So that's another big one, because to replace a panel on the cheap side is $5,000. And some people say, oh, it's fine. Other people say I wouldn't spend a night in that house. The truth is somewhere in the middle, like everything else. So fire hazards, that's always a big one as well.
But that's something that you should find out before the inspection,
If
not
you
at the inspection.
Yeah, because my favorite agents are the one that say, okay, we know it's a Federal Pacific panel. We know the roof sucks.
Right.
They get caught up in the emotionality of the showing. They love it. They're like, oh my God, it's in the right school district. It's not far from my parents' house or whatever, but they don't notice some of this other stuff. What a big one, it's not a deal breaker, but what makes me laugh is the number of people that don't realize a house doesn't have a dishwasher. Because they just walk around and they see it. And then I go, I just want to make sure you're aware this house doesn't have a dishwasher. They're like, I had no idea. I didn't even notice. And the roof also is one of those things that there's a few things you can see from the ground that are a good indication. Or the other thing is, as a newer agent, if you're pulling into the inspection or the showing and you see 3 houses getting their roof done, or you hear it, you can hear them with their nail guns doing the roof in the neighborhood, there's a pretty good shot that there's an issue with that roof. So those are some of the big ones that ideally you would, because I always say to be a good agent, you need to be part inspector and part appraiser, right? You need to be able to see if this house, walk in and go, nope, this house, we're not putting an offer in this house, and you have to know how to write an offer. So that's why that's so important too.
Yeah. One I've been seeing lately is agents that apparently don't realize a house has metal windows when they're walking through it, and then all of a sudden want all the windows replaced. I'm like, you guys wrote an offer on the house knowing that there were metal windows in the house.
That's a good one. When you get those old 1950s crank handle casement windows, they're inefficient. They're not good. And like you said, you're going to want to replace those. And that brings up another point. Speaking of windows, egress. These people, like they show their
explain what egress is.
That's right. They show their 5-bedroom house. You go down to the basement, and there's no egress windows in either of the basement bedrooms. Those are not bedrooms. There must be a window. It's 5.7 square feet. It's basically, picture a firefighter kneeling down with a tank on. They have to be able to get in and out to rescue.
Usually has the ladder.
If the window well is more than 44 inches deep, it has to have a ladder. There's all these things, and I wouldn't expect as an agent to be able to split hairs and get out your tape measure, but if there's a window big enough to get out of, because there was 5 or 6.
You can ask yourself, can my fat ass get out that window if there's a fire? And that's your answer. Yeah.
And that's the other thing too, is you have to think about not just us, but people with limited mobility, old people, children. There was a woman, I don't know, 5-6 years ago in a basement apartment here in Denver that drowned because her apartment was flooding and she couldn't get out.
Whoa.
So egress is no joke. So that's another one. And sometimes they put non-conforming bedrooms, but they're especially in a basement, you have to be able to get out in an emergency.
I'm taking so many notes while you're talking. So I feel like, and Angela, tell me when I'm done what your process is. But I mean, obviously when I'm showing a house, I'm walking through it with my clients, but like, I'm not really looking at like, oh, that couch is so cute, or oh, the fireplace is so awesome. I mean, my eyes at this point can scan the cuteness factor of the house really quickly.
Right.
And then while they're walking, I'm looking at things like windows. I am looking at the furnace. I'm looking to see if the water heater has all the rusting on top and it looks like it's going to explode. I'm looking, when they're in an unfinished basement, I'm looking to see if it looks like it leaked.
Moisture staining, that's a good one.
Yeah, I'm smelling for mold. Like, I am looking for bigger things. I was taught, and you tell me if this is true, like from the ground, or even sometimes if you can't see it from the ground, open a window on the second floor and like lean out and look at the roof. But I was always told that you should look to see how many layers thick it is.
Right.
Because if it's like 4, because they can put shingles on top of shingles. So if it's like 4 layers of shingles thick, that's probably not good. And then I think you taught me that hail hits look like someone spit on the roof.
Right. And well, and a lot of times people are they misdiagnose hail hits. And that's one thing too, as an inspector, I'm not here to diagnose, but there are certain things you can look at. I always tell people as an inspector, I need to be a foot deep and a mile wide. I need to know a little bit about all of it. Do I need to know how to install your furnace? I don't. But I do need to know if it's installed properly. But yeah, same thing. The number of layers on a roof, basically as a home inspector, 2 layers is a defect. Anything more than 1. But I have a buddy I've known forever. He had a house in Five Points that had 5 layers of roof. Whoa. And the roofer said, when you take that roof off, the whole house is going to flex upward. And it did. But he's like, I can't. It's the weight is the biggest issue when it comes to multiple layers of roofing. So yeah, and sometimes people will be shady about it and hide those second layers and third layers. So the inspector should be able to figure that out though as they go. So
do you do that too, Ange? Are you walking through looking at more like, I mean, I guess not like structural, but like inspection item defect things while you're showing?
Yeah, the things that I'm looking at the baseboards. I want to see how much of a gap there is between the flooring that's currently installed, because I don't know if it was installed by a professional or a homeowner, and I can usually tell by that gap. I want to see, if there's a seal that's still there on all the windows. I want to check the caulking around the windows. I always check if it is a basement house. I check the window wells to see how deep the shit is in the window wells. Like if they've never dug out their leaves, especially in the wintertime, that's when you get all that water coming in. It's always in the wintertime when snow gets in there and can't drain because your French drain can't be found because it's covered in shit. So I make them always clean that stuff out, because otherwise that stuff can't work. The proper drainage won't happen if it's covered with 80 feet of leaves, like.
I've seen water a foot up on a window in a window well before. Looks like an aquarium.
Every time.
I had a seller, and we'll finish the buyer's agent side and then we'll flip to the seller side. But I had a seller like 2 years ago who was literally using her window wells as gardens.
Oh wow! So
she was growing like corn and like all this shit like in her window wells. So she was heavily watering them,
right.
And I was always taught like the basic rule is like, you don't want any moisture anywhere near the foundation, right? Yeah. So I was like, oh my God, you're literally watering the foundation. Right. It was insanity.
And the other thing that I check, especially in wintertime, is if there's a sump pump, if it's ever been plugged in, if it's working, that kind of thing. Because down here we get quite a bit of moisture in basements and we need to be able to get it out efficiently and quickly. So
and
those things we check.
They've been putting sump pumps in houses like 90s about is when they started doing it. I had a house about 2 blocks from here once it was built in the 50s, so it didn't come with a sump pump. Had one in each corner, and one was running every 3 or 4 minutes. And my buyers walked out solely because of that, because they were at the bottom of a hill. Yeah. That's an indication. A sump pump can run a little bit, but I had a structural engineer tell me once that having a sump pump is like wearing a helmet when you ski. Mm-hmm. You want to know it's there, but you never want to use it unless it's an emergency. Right. So, that's a good one as well. And another thing with the windows is windows and doors. If you're walking around and you realize the bedroom door doesn't shut all the way, and then the bathroom door doesn't shut all the way, and the window doesn't open. Now the house is telling you a story. There's some kind of movement that's happened because every house moves. There's all kinds of settlement that always is going to happen, but you just want it to be on the minor side.
Yep. And the other thing that I look for is corrosion on top of the water heater.
Water heater.
Also, it's not a hot water heater. I hate when people say that. It's just a fucking
Right.
water heater.
Bananas. I'm like, it's not you don't heat hot water. It's a water heater. And we probably just offended about half the people because I used to call it a hot water heater,
Yeah.
but I don't
I probably
anymore.
just said it actually.
I
I have a
so-
great meme for that. I'll share with you later. It's got like a water heater with a bikini on it. I love that one.
That's
That's a hot water heater.
water heater, yes.
That's like you don't put toast in a toaster. You put bread in a toaster. But
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
What do you think about new homes? Should people do inspections on new homes, like if they're buying from a builder?
well, what's interesting too is with your background, starting in the new home world, I'm curious to see what your opinion is on that too. Because I've got an inspection coming up. The builder would not allow a pre-drywall inspection at all.
Just because they're hiding shit.
Once the drywall's up, you can't see. So yeah, it's builders will all now again, I'm not trying to offend anybody. Builders often will say, oh, it's a new house. You don't have to have inspection. I buy that because of one reason, because you have a warranty.
Yeah.
You know,
Hopefully.
So
Yeah.
hopefully, yes. So I've found major issues in new homes. Now, I'm not talking about major structural. That there's the 8 or 10 year structural warranty. Those I don't care as much about. But I did a house that was like 5,000 square feet, 2 furnaces, 2 ACs. Turned on the furnace, everything was great, worked fine. Then I turned on the air. No, I turned on the air conditioner, everything was fine. Turned on the furnace stayed on, the air conditioner stayed on. They were all running at the same time. So the heat exchanger, the evaporative coil, it was heating and cooling. Potentially thousands of dollars of issue. And not only that, what happens when you move into your house in November and day one you're like, oh, let's turn on the furnace, and now it's not heating, it's the middle of the night. You think the builder's gonna come out and fix it? Not in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
So no, there are always issues. The houses I've ever done that have come close to being perfect, none of them were new builds.
Interesting.
And part of the problem is you see, especially now, how fast houses are going up.
Mhm.
They can't find people to do it. They're having supply chain issues, so they throw these things up so fast. And there are times I'm like, really, come on. I find that whoever installed whatever, they think it's the next person's problem. So they're like, oh, I know this tile sucks, and they're not going to be able to put that outlet in, but that's not my job.
The electrician will do it.
Right.
Yeah.
I
No,
would say
I agree.
look at the size of the warranty department for the home builder, and that should give you your answer. If they have 50 people working in warranty, that means they're busy.
There's an issue. Right. I
Have an inspection.
had a client that just recently walked away from a new build. They had so many problems leading up to closing. They were like, forget it, we're out. And they walked away. Of course, the builder's like, yeah, we'll sell your house for $100,000 more now. So
Right.
that's
They don't care.
right.
And often they won't fix the items that you find as an inspector, but at least you need to know about them. Because Lindsay and I can probably tell you the top 5 things that are going to be wrong with your house on a new build every single time. Because
And
we've literally watched it happen time and time again.
And I have seen some structural things where not structural problems, but things weren't completely installed properly.
Oh yeah.
Those kind of things. And again, once the drywall goes up,
I've seen, I feel like the two of us, Angela and I, have probably seen it. Oh my God. Yeah. So to answer my own question, yes. So I always tell my clients that they should do an inspection before the house is completed. And I tell them if they're unwilling to do that, then they need to do one right before
11
their,
months.
like a 10, 11 months right before their 1-year warranty expires. But yeah, I mean, I personally feel like as an agent, if you're representing a client on a new build and you don't at least highly suggest, like you don't tell them to do an inspection, that could be a massive liability issue for your license as an agent, in my opinion. Like
What
huge.
are the top things that you have seen in new builds that always come up, Lindsay?
Me? Well, I always tell my clients to have the roof looked at. Doesn't cost anything to have a roofer go out there, because sometimes you have houses that like they put the shingle on a year,
oh, yeah.
2
The
years
roof's a year old
before
already.
you move into the house. And like we've been through 37 hailstorms, right? So I'm like, you
Right.
better have the roof looked at. I have seen $30,000 sewer line issues on brand new houses where they ran over the sewer line with the bobcat
Before-
when they
right.
went to backfill.
Under the
Um,
street,
under-
I've seen it broken at
Yeah,
the tap.
absolutely. I've seen, in fact, I just had one like last year, I think it was, where there was a massive foundation issue. So like
Oh, wow.
the buyers, I was the listing agent. I helped my client buy the new build. 6 months later, they got deployed and had to sell it. Buyer's agent pulled back insulation. There was a crack like this. Like I could stick my fist through it
Wow.
in the wall because the span, like the length, it was a ranch. And
Mm.
the span of the length of the wall had no support in it. So, I mean, everything. Like caulking and
The-
trash in your drain lines, right? Like so that you
Every single time.
yeah, you
A
turn
sewer-
on your
a-
shower first day and it like floods back
A
up.
sewer scope guy that I know found a can of beer in the sewer line.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Where do you think they hide the trash when they're being told to remove the trash? They don't go out to the dumpster. They hide it in your house.
Well,
Uh,
and also to touch on another thing that you mentioned earlier, something to look at. If you're in a house with a basement, keep in mind the foundation wall is important, right? That's supporting the outside of the house. The beam in the middle
Mhm.
is supporting double the amount of weight of the foundation wall. So keep an eye. Usually it's an I-beam. It can be wood, but tilting
Yep,
and
twisting.
twisting
Yeah.
is very important. And again, sometimes if it's finished, you can't see it.
Look at this photo Angela just sent me while we're talking
Oh my
about this
God.
roof. There's like she sent me a picture of roof shingles that are like this thick. That's
That's a house I walked up to the other day and I was like, nope, see you later.
yeah, so absolutely.
Well, the other thing about, we as inspectors, we don't have to call out cosmetic things. Now, if there's a huge stain on the carpet, I'll put that in. But a new build, all bets are off. That no house is
yeah.
going to be perfect, but yeah, there's some stuff that's just doesn't look like it was even professionally done. I'm like, that's ridiculous. I went up to a new build one time and, had the sliding glass door at the back. The door opened here. The concrete steps were installed in front of the fixed pane. So either they put the door in wrong or put the concrete steps somewhere. And again, people just they don't think about it. So it's crazy
Yeah.
what you can see.
The things that I see most often with new builds are trash or a bag that they've physically put over the drain line for the washer. And then it floods every single time. Like, I don't know why they haven't fired that same contractor because I literally watched it happen like 40 times in a row. So that's a common one. So make sure that drain in your laundry room works, especially if it's upstairs. Okay. Number two, things that they definitely hide because they can are lolly columns and how much, how much space you've got between that and the beam and how tight it is and how many there are. Because sometimes aesthetically they want to get rid of some and use micro laminate, which is like imaginary steel I-beam, but they don't always have an engineer put that together and make sure it's right. They also don't always have an HVAC engineer come in and make sure that your HVAC system is running properly and efficiently. And so you might see your ductwork is very different than your neighbor's house, which is exactly the same. That's because they can't figure it out. And they don't have a real engineer doing that. They just have a problem with regional building when regional building says it's not hitting these numbers. And they're just trying to hide things. So be really careful with that. And like Lindsay said, the sewer stuff is such a big issue. Because they do drive backhoes over stuff, especially if they're waiting to put your landscaping in until next year. Be really careful with that. That's the time that you want a sewer scope is after they put that sod in and they've dug up your whole front yard.
And I see that too, because any new house, especially any new production builder is going to have, they're going to use manufactured wood trusses. They're engineered trusses. So they call the place and say, hey, bring the trusses, and they put them up. Well, what happens when one of those trusses gets broken? Do you think they stop building on the house, order a new one?
Nope.
Absolutely not. They're like, this will be fine. And they put it up and it's good. And because they don't want to be the ones saying we got to stop working on this house because they're under such deadlines. And the more houses they put up, the more money everybody makes.
Yeah. There's not like a guy at their lumber yard looking to see if that lumber is straight. Like you see everybody doing at Home Depot. There's no one doing that. They're like, is it twisted? Fucking we'll use it. Throw it in there. Yeah. We just need wood. We don't care.
Oh my God, that wood is completely eaten away, and there's like 7 knots and this much actual. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah, no. I think if you are not like in writing personally telling your clients on new builds to get a home inspection, that could be a massive liability for you as an agent. So I think if they decide ultimately they don't want to do it, that's their deal. But I mean, I've got to say, I would say 99% in the 6 or 7 years that I was with a builder never did an inspection.
Wow.
Nope.
I mean, I still like I think 99% of my buyers now try not to do one. And as an agent, you better know what the builder's warranty covers too.
Right. No, because most everyone has at least an 8 or 10 year structural, and some do concrete, some don't warrant the concrete. So yeah, it's and I had a builder tell me one time each house they spend about $8,000 on stuff that they should have done right the first time, and to go back and fix it. And
you also want to ask that builder how long they've been in business and who is warrantying that house, because they can't physically warranty their own house unless they've been in business that long. And if they're warranting their own house, that's also might be an issue, because it's going to take you a hell of a lot longer to get those warranty issues taken care of, because they're going to do it in-house on their schedule, not on yours. So I always recommend to people buying new builds, and I haven't sold a new build in a while just because of this, to get their own home warranty outside of the builders, in addition to it.
Third party. Yeah, and I had another builder tell me I was doing a pre-drywall. And it was funny, this family, I did their pre-drywall, post-drywall, closing, and their 1 year warranty. And I've done like 3 houses right there too. But the builder said, I don't have to fix anything you find. You realize that, because we've already gotten all of our permits from the city approved. I'm like, I get that. But then they came in and drywall. I went into the laundry room to check the 220 for the dryer. They drywalled over it. I've gone into a brand new kitchen and looked around and gone, there's no light switch. They drywalled over the light switch. I couldn't turn the lights on. So those are the kind of things that you find in new builds. That's like you said, it's at least have somebody come. Sewer scope for sure. And when it comes to like radon testing, you don't need to do the radon test before you close, because there's people in and out. It's not going to be a viable test. Do it at some point. Also find out if there's a passive system, and if the builder will warrant radon, because houses are just going to be high almost all the time. So
other important stuff is agents. If you're a buyer's agent on a new build and you're not walking the house every once in a while, and you're not going out to it while it's being built, shame on you. I recently caught at a frame stage, they were sheathing the house with plywood, and there were massive gaps between the plywood and the other piece of plywood that was supposed to be butting up to it, or the OSB. And the builder was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I was like, no, the fuck it isn't. Those have to be,
literally frame the wrong house.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Like I've gone out and walked, and I've been like, wait, there's a pantry there. And they're like, oh shit.
Oh, they were doing the next door floor plan.
Yeah, like I mean, they literally missed like a study on the main floor and I think agents have a tendency to think new builds are really easy, right? You just like do the person that the builder does the contract, and then you just coast until you get to closing. You show up with a bottle of wine. Yay. That is not the way that you should conduct yourself as an agent. It should be the same as any resale transaction.
I'm shocked about this fact in general, but new builds, how many people don't? They're like, oh, we don't need an agent. I'm like, you always do.
Yeah. You find out that you need an agent about a month before closing is usually when you find out that you needed an agent. And I just went through this. I have clients that have to have attorneys involved because the house is so wrong.
Yeah.
And like they've involved like the senator and the governor to try to get this builder to like get his life together. And it's a mess. Like you might save yourself a few $1,000s, quote unquote, when really you're not saving yourself anything. The builder is saving themselves a few $1,000s, and they're getting you not to have an advocate. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is if you don't have somebody looking at that stuff, you're going to move in and have a nightmare on your hands. And then you're going to be like, oh, you know what? That's my fault.
Yeah. And the number of fights, finger quotes, that I've had with builders about fixing things for my clients, unbelievable. The number of people who call me on a yearly basis who like are out of state or out of my area, and they're like, oh my God, something's happening with the builder. We need help. I mean, you've got to be more involved in a new build too.
Yeah, it's and I've heard people that have done new builds go, I'll never do this again.
Oh, yeah.
Because your clients are certainly going to the house every week at least. So yeah, you're definitely seeing how the sausage is made, and I think sometimes there's some benefits to not. So,
agreed. So flipping to and then I have a bunch of questions too. Flipping to the listing agent side, Angela, I'm curious on how you do things. When I am at my listing presentation and I ask them for a tour of the house, I'm always paying close attention to those couple things that we said are super important. So like, when we walk into their mechanical room, I get eyes on their furnace. Like I want to know as a listing agent, obviously I can't catch everything, but I want to know as much as possible on the big stuff that could come up that could screw us up on inspection. So I'm looking to see how old the furnace is, how old the AC is, how old the water heater is, how old the roof is, right? Like all of that major stuff. Do you look for that too? Because I think a lot of agents just go in, they give the pretty presentation, they're so excited that they got the listing,
Right.
they just leave, and then stuff comes up on inspection that they should have known.
At
You know,
least
like-
that in their head.
Yeah, like I walk the entire property and look for peeling paint because I know that's something that is going to come up at appraisal,
FHA.
right?
Yeah.
FHA, VA, right? So do you do that too, Ange?
Yeah, I mean, that's really the whole reason why we started our building company, is so that I could go in there ahead of time and get rid of those objections for my sellers and say, okay, these are the things that are going to come up regardless of who the buyer's agent is. The inspector is going to catch it. So we might as well fix these things now. So let's do it now so we can get ahead of it. And then I pay for those things up front and then get paid back at closing. That's the whole reason why I created the whole building company, is to do that. So getting rid of objections as a listing agent right now, that's kind of a big deal.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we do that, and then we make sure that, like, if it's in a neighborhood where there's 4,000 production built houses, what do we want your house to do? Stand out and be memorable. So we need to do that. We have to make your house stand out and be memorable. Otherwise, you're just going to get lost in the sea of houses. So we're going to make sure that it's mechanically correct and safe for people to purchase. That you're not going to have that come up later. Otherwise, this is going to cost you tens of thousands of dollars later that you weren't expecting. And other agents probably won't do this. Most people that are coming in for a listing are going to say, let's just get it on the market immediately. I never do that. Usually between the time that I go and visit a listing and the time that we put it on the market is about a month, because I'm making sure that the house is mechanically sound, that it looks really good aesthetically, and that it's staged and photographed properly. I am not the type of agent you're going to hire that's going to do something really cheaply or that's going to put the house on the market tomorrow. It's not going to happen. We take our time
I
and make
feel
sure it's
like-
right, or it'll cost you money.
I feel like when I list a property, I'm probably 90% on what's going to come up on inspection. Obviously, like I didn't test the outlet to know if the outlet didn't work, but I damn well know if there's no GFIs in the
right.
kitchen, right? So like I'm really, and for anyone who is a newer agent, I would suggest looking up like FHA and VA appraisal requirements. That'll give you a list of things that you can, make sure look good when you're visiting the property, or maybe even go to another agent in your office and ask them if you could see their last few inspection reports or few inspection objections, or get with your preferred inspector and say like, hey, what am I supposed to be looking at? Because I feel like it's my fault if I don't know that that's going to come up on inspection.
Yeah.
Well,
You should be walking through the house as if you're a buyer's agent or a buyer and saying, okay, here's the things that I'm going to have a problem with for my buyer, or I'm going to bring up to my buyer. And I'm going to get rid of those things. I'm going to fix it ahead of time.
And you bring up an interesting point too, because one of the things that I have done in the past, and I'm curious to get both of your opinions, is, and I'm not a fan of this, is a pre-listing
I was
inspection.
just going to talk about pre-list inspections. All right, let's talk about this because I don't like them.
I hate them.
I will not do one.
To Angela, from the point
Same.
you brought up earlier too. If I do a pre-listing inspection, here are the 48 problems with your house. By law, you have to then say, come by my house with 48 problems. You have
Right.
to disclose. So again, you as the agent, you're like, I didn't test the furnace. I don't know how, you have no liability. But once I give you that report, it's a huge amount of liability. So I'm not a fan, to be honest.
I don't know why people do those. Like
They don't want to be surprised, I guess.
I don't know. I'm not, Mike. I do have clients every once in a while that are like, we should get it. Pre-inspected. And I'm like, no. Because
The ones I've seen that do those are usually agents that either their husband is an inspector or a family member is an inspector. And they think that if they have this inspection, that whoever buys the house is then not going to have an inspection. And they're just going to be like, oh, here's the whole report. We know ahead of time.
I
Not
was up in Mead. Those that don't live here, it's about 40 miles north of here, but they had a pre-listing inspection, and I was doing the buyer's inspection. No agent, no buyer came, but the sellers were there. So they had sent me the inspection report ahead of time. The buyers did. And I found 22, 23 things that inspector didn't find. So not only did they pay for it, they had to disclose everything, and they still were surprised. So yeah, I agree. I've never been a fan. I mean, yes, I get it. You want to avoid surprises, but I don't see the reason to do it.
Let's talk about that for a second. Every inspector is completely different.
I was going to bring that up too.
If you have no idea what NACHI or InterNACHI are, or licensing requirements, are they regulated by DORA? How do you become a home inspector? What do you need to know about? Like, can you tell us like how you guys are all different, and how do I tell an inspector with knowledge from one that has nothing?
True story. I had a house a few years ago in Southeast Aurora where inspector number one literally was like this, and it was cute. It was updated. This house is falling apart. It needs to be condemned. Don't just walk away, buyers, run. And it was my listing, right? So then we put it back on the market, and the next inspector literally said, I didn't even find anything. Don't even submit an objection.
That just happened to me.
How
Right.
right? So like, how do you pick your preferred inspector? What makes a good one?
Right.
And why is it that everyone's opinion is so different?
Those are great questions, and it's funny because you could tell you're experienced agents because you're asking that question. You probably have people that listen to this that don't live in Colorado, but Colorado is a non-licensing state. Home inspectors do not have to be licensed at all in Colorado. Uncle Joe with the tape measure and an outlet tester can be an inspector. There are other states like Florida, Nevada. I've taught home inspecting in multiple states, but like I went to Detroit and taught, I went to Atlanta and taught, because they're non-licensing states. But to be a good home inspector, they should be licensed. And to bring up NACHI or InterNACHI, Angela, what you said before, NACHI is the National Association of Certified Home Inspectors. They're kind of one of the industry standards that we love them here because they're in Boulder. They're very close to us.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, everybody should be a licensed inspector. That means they have gone through proper training. Just like you, I have to do continuing education and all this other kind of stuff as well. So yeah, make sure they're licensed because there is absolutely no governing body. We don't have to be approved by the state or by DORA or anybody like that. So do some research. It's kind of hard because a lot of the classes I teach, it's to new people who want to be home inspectors. And when they're first starting out, I'm like, you're starting your own company and you've never done an inspection, you have no shot. It was scary enough for me to go out on my own when I had done 4,500 inspections. But at least my company's newer, but I am not.
Right.
I'm a certified master inspector. Certified master inspector has to have at least 1,000 inspections.
Wow.
And be in business for 3 years, I think. But
wow.
So yeah, it's very important. Anybody can look like anything online.
Yes.
Get reviews.
Same with agents.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't care what state you live in. Make sure they're licensed. Now there are some licensing. The National Home Inspector exam is a nationwide exam that you can take as a home inspector. This was a bitch. I mean, I hadn't taken the proctor exam for like 35 years, but had to studied my ass off and really focused and passed it. So I could actually go to Florida and be a home inspector or go to Nevada and be a home inspector. But I did it, and it's just how it is. More initials behind your name, the better. But it's critical to find an inspector that's certified. But about half of what we do is inspecting. The other half is what we say.
Just gonna bring that up too. Okay, so before you go there, like Angela said, and like you said, when you're screening to find your inspector, someone who's licensed, regardless of state, right?
Regardless of state.
Okay, and then hopefully someone who is a master certified because they've done 1,000 at least, right? So that's how you should pick someone, you think?
That's the biggest thing. Like if you were to go to the certifiedmasterinspector.org and go to Denver, surprisingly, which I'm very happy about, my name was the first one. I think that just happens to be random. But yeah, go to InterNACHI. It's internachi.org. You can find an inspector there. Because as a matter of fact, my cousin, he bought a duplex in Missouri. He's like, how do I find an inspector? I'm like, I got you. So I went on Internachi, searched, found the guy, called him. He's a certified master inspector. I had no issues with him. So yeah, there are places online where you can find people, and there's CMEA and ASHI and there's a bunch of certifications you can have. But yeah, just make sure they're certified.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like as an agent, the most important relationships that you have in your career, like the closest people you're going to spend a lot of time, leaning on and meeting is your inspector and your lender.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And I will say, just me personally, I just want a home inspector that inspects. I don't want the home inspector that like rolls out this list of all the other shit that he does for you. Like he'll do a radon test, he'll do a sewer scope, he'll do a this, a that. Just inspect the fucking house.
I'm not here to sell you. Now, that's the thing is I can do radon and I don't do sewer scopes, but I have a guy, that's fine.
Right, you can have a guy. I just don't want you to be the one that's like fucking putting the sewer scope in it.
Because I have worked for companies that, when you go, you're talking to the person there, here's this flyer about this and also this and this too. I'm not there to sell you. And also I think that minimizes your legitimacy.
Yeah. Exactly. It 100% does. I also always ask for a copy of their home inspection because I want to see what it looks like for me as an agent. That way I can see like how easy it's going to be for my clients to understand. If there's a whole bunch of red on it, that's concerning because that means it's a scary color. I want to make sure that those are all like serious things. I want to see what the layout is so people can see that kind of thing. Those are important.
Right. And it's interesting because there's a lot of different softwares out there that inspectors use, and I've used a lot of them. There's one that I know of that to me, it's a terrible software because to me, to them, the home inspector is the end user, but that's not it. The buyer is the end user.
Yeah.
So I have a buddy who lives in California. He was like, hey, I'm buying a house. I'm like, send me the inspection report. And it was in this particular software and it was hard for me to read. And if it's hard for me to read, your clients are not going to understand it. So, and I pay for the service, so I'm not an advertiser, but Spectora is who I use. The reports are so nice. They're so easy. They're tons of pictures. You can video. It's not highly technical. You can customize it. So any comment that comes in a report that I have done, I wrote the comment. So that's so important. So and any inspector you hire, they should have at least one sample report that you can see as well.
I've seen them handwritten.
Handwritten.
Sometimes like legitimately the agent sends over something that is probably legitimate and whatever. There's something wrong in the, oh my God, horror stories. We got to go there. I have like 2 questions and then horror stories. I want to hear them so bad. But we had an inspector on, this is really crazy. So these people had owned a house in Highlands Ranch for 30 years. They were the second homeowners, and unbeknownst to them, and I swear to God on my life, it was you that caught it, by the way. This was a while ago, but I swear to God, I have sold over 5,000 houses. I've seen everything. There was a crawl space underneath. So in Colorado, we have structural floors, which means that it's not concrete on dirt. Sometimes when the soil moves around a lot, you have a void in between the floor and the dirt so that the house can move up and down. So these people had carpeted over completely over the hatch to the crawl space. And I mean, there's no way. And Dirk was like, it sounds weird under my feet.
I remember that.
And I was like, what? It was like
on it going, there's something down there.
And so he opened it up and there was mold that had eaten into the joists. I mean, the house was going to fall down probably at some point eventually. Right. It was bad, but I would never have known. They lived there for 30 years. They didn't know it was there. So that's why you do have a good inspector. But sometimes I'll get inspection reports and agents will be like, oh, did you know that there's a hatch in the floor that we had no idea about? And I'm like, no, can you send me a picture? And they're like, well, my inspector didn't take any because he handwrites his reports. That's not the guy. You don't want that guy.
A small report for me will have 60 or 70 pictures in it. They're high res. You can zoom in. You can say, you've got a ton of them. So
as agents, the other thing that I look for in an inspector is how easy is it for me to cut and paste the real issues and put it into my inspection objection, because that's 100% what we're all going to do.
Right, and that when I'm training inspectors, I'm like, you need to be aware the verbiage that you write may end up in the inspection objection, an actual legal document,
Yes.
because and that's why it's so important. And again, I mean, and Angela, to your point from earlier too, is you never want to be somebody who comes in and says, "Oh my God, the house is," oh, you said it, the house is falling down, or this sucks, or what. That's not our job. You know what? The biggest thing that you can do is build a rapport with the client.
Yeah.
To be friendly. This is a fun thing for them. You don't,
Yes.
you know, I've had agents call me deal killers. I'm like, that was your shitty house. It was not me. I just pointed things out. But I'm never going to tell somebody they should or shouldn't buy a house. We're all in the information world. That's our business. We give them information, they make the decision. So yeah, it's how you talk to people. You don't want to freak them out, but you don't want to sugarcoat things either.
Yeah,
Right.
because what happens if, let's say, okay, so two different sides of the coin. What happens if you see something really major? How do you say that to them without freaking them out? And then also, like, what happens if you miss something?
Those are two good questions. I hate answering the second one, but
Yeah.
it does happen. The first one is again, you are going in with, you're just giving information. I did have a woman one time that was crying by the end of the review, but she had major structural issues, and
It'll happen.
and
Yeah.
it does happen. But no, the biggest thing is, you know, they're like, oh, what about the deck? Honestly, I'm not in love with the deck. There's a few structural issues that I think need to be maintained, and basically, this is what I saw. Have a deck specialist come take a look at it. That's what the inspection objection is for. That's to give you time.
Yeah.
So if you approach it directly, you don't get passive aggressive about it. Just directly with facts, show them the pictures, take them out and show them what's wrong, and they'll go, oh yeah, I didn't notice that. And then you turn it over to the agent, and then they'll do the inspection objection. As far as missing things, it is going to happen. You know, we look at 500 things in a house, and things can get missed. A good inspector will take care of that. I missed an HVAC thing one time. Guess what? I paid to fix it. It's the cost of doing business.
Same thing with a good agent.
Cost of doing business.
Yeah. What happens if an inspector breaks something? Because I've seen that too.
See that?
I'm looking at that right now.
I've seen an inspector break my client's garage door.
Oh yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you touch everything, right? You're opening everything, you're touching, and there's been times I've broken stuff, and you know what? Sometimes it's not your fault, sometimes it is. You will get blamed. You know, it's just one of those things. A lot of inspectors now are wearing body cameras because of that,
Yeah.
which I think is smart.
Yeah. I also think as a listing agent, it's very important for you to prepare, like you said, your clients for expectation wise of the inspection. Like they need to know they are going to open your attic hatch. So it'll probably be some little insulation that falls down. They're going to flush all your toilets. They're going to do this. They're going to turn, because like in the beginning of my career would have clients be like, oh my God, they turned up my furnace, or, like sellers can get really angry because they feel like people are touching their stuff.
Tenants, I've had a tenant go crazy.
Insane. So definitely, be good about informing your sellers.
Well, yeah, and the other
happen.
thing, prepare your sellers and have them prepare the house as well. Angela, like you were saying before, they're going to open. We need access to stuff.
Yes.
Don't stack a bunch of shit in front of the furnace.
Exactly.
I need to get to the furnace.
Yeah,
You know,
your panel box. You shouldn't be like the one that's moving all the boxes away so that your inspector can get to the panel box.
Right, because I've gone into places and the electrical panel was behind 100 boxes in the garage. I'm like, I don't have time. The agent was like, can I move them? I'm like, sure. We're not required to move anything. Now I will move a few things. That's fine. But the other thing too, and I don't know, it doesn't change the way I inspect, but when I walked up to a house one time, knocked on the door. The guy was like, I'm so sorry. I'm going to leave, but I have a job interview on Zoom at 2:30. I'll be out of your hair. I'm like, okay, fine. And he said, there's 3 places you might need a ladder. They're already set up. Well, help yourself to stuff in the fridge. I walked into houses. They had fresh baked muffins and water. Music's playing. All the lights are on. It doesn't change my inspection, but it sure as hell makes me a lot happier. I mean,
and for the love of God, tell your sellers to leave. Like that guy sounded like he managed it well,
He
but
did, yeah,
oh my
but
God, like
they shouldn't be.
oh, it's the worst when your sellers and they're texting you the whole time, like, oh my God, he said this about,
Right.
so they need
Because
to leave.
legally, I'm not allowed to give the seller information.
Yeah.
My information is for the
You work for
buyer.
the buyer, right?
And the buyer has to say, okay, yes, you can do this. But I had a guy sit there the whole time, watch me the whole time. And I'm because you're pointing out defects and they're like, oh, I'm going to fix that. Oh, I had a guy walk behind me with like tools and was fixed. I'm like, I don't, so yeah, sellers cannot be there. Legally, they can. It's their house. I've had sellers say, should I leave? My answer is yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You should leave. So
Yeah.
a lot of those are for sale by owner sometimes. Not much you can do about it. But yeah, as a listing agent, prepare your buyer, prepare the house, and tell them they have to leave.
And as a buyer's agent, one of my biggest pet peeves, as a listing agent, one of my biggest pet peeves on the entire planet is when a buyer's agent uses an inspection to renegotiate the price on the house. Now, I understand legitimately, like if there is something wrong and we either have to fix it or reduce the price or give a concession for it, completely different story. But don't, like, how many millions of times do you see this, Angela? The house is priced at $550. We offered $500. We end up back up at $550, and then the inspection comes in, and shockingly now the house is only worth $500,000. Right? Like, as a buyer's agent, never tell ever your buyers like, oh, we'll just use the inspection as a, just get it under contract, and we'll just use the inspection to get the price down.
Yeah. My favorite is this house has polybutylene piping. Oh, no shit. You walked through the house. You guys are under contract on it. How did you not know this? Now you want me to recall the whole house? What is wrong with you?
Aluminum wire. You didn't look. And also, as a listing agent, always read your client's seller's property disclosure. Right. And as a buyer's agent, look at the freaking seller's property disclosure before you go to the inspection. Maybe even bring it for your inspector.
Yeah, there's and that's the problem is I think my philosophy is by and large I trust people. People are good, but there are some people who will hide stuff. Oh, yeah. There will people put rugs over things and put pictures over. There's nothing you can do about that. That's why the best house to inspect is a vacant house. But that doesn't happen nearly as often.
Definitely, because as a stager, I'm going to cover up that big ass stain that's on your carpet with a rug.
Exactly. But if I'm your listing agent and I find out you have a huge foundation crack and you put a picture over the top of it, I'm not going to be happy with it.
No,
right? Like,
absolutely.
Not
what you should do as a listing agent is preemptively call a structural engineer and have a report done and have a game plan in place so that you can overcome that objection later.
Yeah, so I do agree with that. I do not do pre-inspections. But if I'm in a house and I see a roof that is bombed, a furnace that's bombed out and done, or like a structural issue that I believe in, then I do call in an engineer because to me, that's the one thing where a buyer's mind is going to go insane, and it's up to the engineer. That one I want to preempt, like Angela said.
And I've had structural engineers come out and say, no, I see what you see, but everything's fine. Great, they get the seal of approval, and that's great. Another thing that just reminded me too is as a buyer's agent, what I find is a lot of newer agents, they want to get the house under contract. They do that. They say, how much is the inspection going to be? $400. Okay, and then there's radon, and then there's sewer scope. And what if I find a structural issue? Now there's a $300 for a structural engineer, $300 more for a report. What if the HVAC needs? So that $400 can get up to $1,200 or $1,300 in minutes. So I think it's a good idea also, again, to prepare your buyers.
Yeah.
No, don't tell them it's going to be $400 because that is the bottom end just home inspection. If other things come up, you may have to pay for that. So I see the number of people that are buying a $750,000 house that won't spend another $150 for a sewer scope is shocking to me.
Not smart. I want to hear some horror stories when we wrap up. Tell us some really good. They can be about agents. They can be. Don't tell us their names.
No,
but they can be or do secretly when we're off. Or tell us shitty houses. Like Angela, and you think on it too. Do you have your best inspection horror story? I'm trying to think.
I did have an pull me aside and say, listen, this buyer is very squirrely. If you could just not include these things in your report. I was like, it's not your reputation. I was, no,
it's not even your reputation. Not. It's
the
agent's license. Right. And I think we've talked about this so much on our show. in our opinion, 2023 through probably 2025 will be the year of the lawsuits against agents because of the number of agents who advise people to not do inspections at all, just to get a house, or advise people
just to get
to
under
take,
contract.
issues like it's scary. So yeah,
Well,
don't do that.
And it's funny too, because most of the time, most of the houses you and I do are nice. You know, they're decent. I was in Boulder a couple years ago, and for those of you that don't live in the area, Boulder's where CU is, and it's a very overpriced neighborhood.
Yes.
And I was doing this shitty duplex. It was not far from the college. It was $1.2 million or something. Each side was like 900 square feet. Roof had 3 layers, including wood shingles on the bottom. So I get in the crawl space. There's some standing water. Both furnaces are in the crawl space. I come across a luckily dead rat that was about that long.
Ew.
Done. My inspection's done at that point. If there's a dead rat, there's probably live ones. And there was standing water, and it was all nasty. And I was like, nope. And I don't know if my clients ever bought it, but I hope not. Or they got some pretty serious concessions. But
how
yeah.
many times do you walk away where you're like, I hope these people don't? I always, and
happen.
I don't know if this is appropriate or not, and I don't know if you hate me for this, but I pull Dirk aside, not with my clients while he's in the house, and I always say, if it were you, would you buy this house or not?
Right.
And he's very honest with me, but how many times do you walk away and go like, I pray to God these people don't buy this house?
Pretty regularly. I mean, when I say pretty regularly, I mean, because again, it's that emotionality factor. Because, and I mean, you and I have known each other long enough where I can be very candid with you. I'm never going to say that to a client, but there are times that, they love these things. And then I'm like, but here's another example. I had an agent one time, Federal Pacific Panel. I'm telling the client, Federal Pacific Panel, fire hazard. The agent said, yeah, that's not a big deal. I'm like, client, looking dead in my eyes, this is a fire hazard. I've seen what can happen. Oh, we have one. It's not a big deal. I'm like, that's not your job.
It's also your license. Like,
right.
But I don't think that agents, we've talked about this so much on the show, agents practice limited law without a license to practice law.
Without knowing it,
right?
Yeah.
So no, you don't tell someone that it's not a big deal.
Have a licensed engineer look at it. Yeah. Well, and it's and one of the coolest things about our jobs is getting to see all these houses.
Yeah.
I did a house down in Parker, had a full, not Parker, it was a Polo Reserve, had a full-size basketball court inside. I mean, it was one of the coolest houses I've ever seen. And I don't know where these people get the money. It was like $4 or $5 million. I've done houses for some Avalanche players and some Bronco players and things like that.
We talked about hers.
Yes.
And she probably is watching. We love her. Anyways, I was going to say her name, but I'm not going to call her out like that. She worked with me at D.R. Horton, actually.
Right.
So what's the number one thing that an agent should and shouldn't do? Like, what's the worst thing that drives you crazy, pisses you off, is the worst thing they could do?
Right.
You thinking
there's a lot of. First of all, if your client wants to come, that's fine. If you can convince them to come towards the end, that's best. But I even have an agent. I don't know if you watch Ian Randall. He rodeo clowns for him. He tells them, come to the inspection, whatever. Then he goes through all the stuff with them and makes sure that they're not following me. It's really nice to have that done. But
I try to keep mine away from
you.
too.
You do, and buyers too. Even at last or sellers, you made sure that you stayed in the kitchen, talking to her. But that's one of the things too. Prepare your clients. Because here's the thing, I always say your client. They're my client too.
Yeah.
There shouldn't be a contentious relationship between agents and inspectors. We're all on the same team. We all have the same thing. The difference is, as agents, you have so much more skin in the game than I do. On a big inspection, I'll make $500, $600. So there are some agents that they've got blinders on. They're like, first of all, you should get a discount from him. Do you give discounts? You make 15 grand on a, I'm like,
why would you want a discount inspector, by the way? That's crazy to me.
Right?
Same reason why you wouldn't want a discount agent.
Exactly. So, those are some of the things. And again, we're a team. As I've had, agents call me. I had one seller call me and say, you blew my deal and I'm so mad at you. But then she said, but I want you to inspect the house I'm buying. I'm like, you can't have it both ways.
Right.
So again, I think it should be a friendly relationship. I mean, there's agents like you that I've worked with for years and years. And, it's we're all part of the same team. We all want the same thing. We want the clients to have the house. I don't want my client to have to do 3 different inspections. It's better for me, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to serve the client. So whatever we can do together to get them across the finish line, that's the whole point of what we do. So that's the biggest thing. We're all on the same team. Just prepare everybody. Make sure expectations are managed. I think is the big one.
Angela, what's your top inspection horror story?
Oh fuck. Trailer in out east. Oh god, I can't. It like makes me fucking
Have the shivers.
It had some homemade skirting made out of OSB and plywood. We needed to get underneath of it to see what the foundation looked like. Inspector opened it up, and it's full of snakes.
Ew.
I'm dead. I will die
Yeah, no,
right there.
I can't do spiders, but
Spiders I can do.
oh
Snakes,
no! I'll burn the house down.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I've seen a little garter snake one time in the crawl space. But to me, they're all cobras. I don't care. I don't care if it's a garter snake or they're all
We're
going
done.
to kill. Right.
Yeah.
You'll see a dirt-shaped hole in the foundation if I see a snake anywhere that's in there. But yeah, it's I was in an old house built in the late 1800s. Those really tall 2-story houses. I open up the attic and I'm looking around and I'm face to face with a raccoon, like 4 feet from me, and all I've heard about raccoons is they are very territorial.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just like, Patch goes back, I go down. Because best case scenario, he attacks me, I fall 12 feet down on my ladder. And so, yeah, they're the most important thing about home inspections is my safety and the safety of everybody else there. I will not do anything that I think is dangerous. Now, there are inspectors out there who will be lazy and not get in the crawl space because they don't want to. That's not how it goes. That's part of our job. But safety is the most important thing, for sure.
I will say you will never see me and my gigantic hair in a fucking crawl space. Don't even ask me to go in there. I don't care what you see. I'm not going in there with you. Just take a picture of it. I'll look at it on the report. No, I don't care.
I'm sorry about that, but I'm not going in there with you.
There's no
That's
reason to.
yeah, no,
and liability-wise,
absolutely.
it's probably good that you don't.
Yeah.
You're not going to go on the roof either.
No.
So
No.
I'm terrified of heights. I don't even want to go on a ladder like one rung up.
right.
God.
I think
Take a
the
shower
hardest
now.
inspections for me are always the ones with my sellers where stuff comes up that we really want. Oh my God. Remember the one, I've had some horror stories. I remember the one that I had, I think I called you about that too. And I was like, what do I do?
Oh, yeah.
So
You were listening.
well, we bought the
Right.
bought the property.
Right.
Okay. The guy had flipped it and he finished the basement. The house is 10 out of 10, absolutely beautiful. Buyers come to do, like, this is the craziest turn of events ever. Now we're selling the property 2 years later. The buyers come to do an inspection. Okay. My client during COVID had his job moved to remote. So he had Comcast come out and put higher speed cables in his basement. So they drilled a hole that was like maybe 2 inches big in the wall to put the wiring in there, right? Well, the whole basement was covered up with drywall. So for some fucking reason, unknown to me for the rest of my life, the buyer's agent's inspector, when they come to inspect the house, he drops his camera down the hole by accident. And when he pulls the camera out, he sees that there were 27 helical piers installed by the seller behind the wall. The guy had not given us any disclosure. He didn't permit it. Like, so then my client had to go and engage an attorney about it. And I call, I mean, it's just unbelievable because I had to call Dirk and be like,
right. If it's done right, it's great. But
oh, you couldn't. I mean, if Comcast hadn't drilled this big of a hole in that wall, we would never have known it was there.
Right. And that's the other thing too is what we do is non-invasive visual inspection. I can only see what I can see. I've had people come and say, yeah, you didn't tell me the blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, yeah, your contractor ripped the wall out. That's how he can tell, It's one of those things that we can't see through walls. We can only see what's visible. So,
yeah, usually the ones here that we have like major issues that people can't always see ahead of time is if we know that it's ever been a meth lab or a marijuana grow. Those are the ones where, yeah. And as agents, we know what the typical issues are going to be there, but if we're walking into it and we have no idea that that's what it is, but we start seeing some of those signs, then you're like, oh shit, okay, we have to check for this, and this.
And mold too, like big mold. Like
Yeah.
I had when I used to list foreclosure properties back in the day for the banks, I had one up in Morrison that, I mean, it was like growing on the walls, like it looked like flowers. And I was in there for 5 minutes and I had a nosebleed and had to go to the ER. Like, and then you have to tent the whole house. Like, yeah, but that, like, meth lab is a tough one.
Well, and
So
again, it's people say was it
non-disclosed usually.
I don't know.
Marijuana
not
grow,
trained-
like
not
there's
trained to
some
do that.
signs, right? But you don't know for sure. So.
Well, and a lot of inspectors are retired contractors and things like that. So some of them have experience in other places and things like that. But sometimes, they may know certain things. Like I've done houses for builders and personal like contractors and things like that. They know more than me, and I'm comfortable with that because that's not my job.
Right.
But yeah, when it comes to places like meth, you're like, you go into a basement that has extra ventilation, extra power,
Extra
water
lighting.
Now we're talking about
Extra stoves.
Right.
Extra stoves.
That one I've never seen. But yeah.
Oh man, we've seen some crazy shit down here, man. I don't know. I've like undisclosed meth labs is one thing as an agent. Like I don't understand how you don't know that that's a meth lab. Like, have you ever smelled what a meth lab smells like when you weren't ready for it? You walk in and your nose hair is gone.
Right.
Like everything inside of you is burning. It's on fire.
It's disgusting.
Like, yeah, it's into everything.
But I think agents have, like we said, big time blinders on. They go in to get the listing, and then they just go through the rest of their steps. Where if they slow down when they're walking through the listing initially, you can catch a lot of stuff.
Well, the other thing too is if it's a rental. I've done houses where tenants aren't aware. They don't know. They didn't know that we were coming.
Correct.
I had there's an inspector I know that was locked in a crawl space by a tenant. He got in the crawl space. The tenant closed the hatch, put the kitchen table back on top. He was ready to call the police. Yeah. So because tenants sometimes are pissed because they're losing their house. Yeah. Potentially, but yeah. So just make sure everybody's aware. So
I think inspectors are always early. So if you say you're going to be there at 8, make sure the seller knows that you're probably going to hear somebody on your roof at like 8:30, 8:45, or 7:30, 7:45. Like it's going to happen.
And that's the other thing too, is when I'm training new people, I'm like, you do not even approach that. Oh, you don't do anything to that house until you ring the doorbell and let them know you're there. Like for me, I don't do inspections at 8 because to me that's a little early. So I do 10 o'clock, but I'll get there at 9:45. If there's somebody there, I'll ring the bell. Hey, I'm just getting started on the outside. No, blah blah. But I've heard horror stories of people climbing up on people's roofs, and then the kids are getting out of the shower. And I'm like, that. No, you make sure they know you're there. But yeah, it's because you want to get a jump on it a little bit. But yeah, it's too early is not a good thing.
Yeah. So I think that was an excellent learning experience, even for me. I think
we could go on for hours.
We could go on for hours. I think the most important thing is that you look for a master certified inspection, or ask, like Angela said, for a copy of their inspection report. Maybe ask for some references from other agents, and really get to, I think, know your inspector. Person.
Right. Yeah, because it's that.
I would say the number one thing not to do also is if you're a buyer, do not bring your father to the fucking home inspection to like mess with your inspector as like a part-time job. Like
your friend who was a contractor 27 years ago who's been fired by 6 construction companies. Don't bring that dude either.
Yeah, because I've had that. I've had the uncle. I'm like, he said, oh, there wasn't a GF. This old school is JFI. There's not a GFCI in the bathroom. I'm like, there isn't a GFCI outlet. But he's like, yeah, but I'm like, if you would let me finish what I'm saying, smile.
Smile.
I will, yes. But you're right. I did a house. I counted 17 people came. Every picture I had, there was somebody. It was family, cousins, everybody.
No, it should, kids. In my opinion, it's only for the clients. And I do understand, like, if you have an issue where, mom and dad flew in to like see the house, or like whatever, but like keep them away from the inspector.
Right.
Let the inspector do his job.
Because I've
chat with them in the kitchen.
Those dads come in and they're flexing on me like, all right, let's see what this guy knows. And I'm like, I know what I know, and you don't know what my scope is and that kind of stuff. So just, but that's a great point. Just if they want to come see the house, that's fine. But it's best not to get involved in the inspection because it's between us and the buyer.
Yeah. If your home inspector shows up in tube socks and New Balances that were white but now have grass clippings on it and a fanny pack, you may want to reevaluate your home inspector.
Right.
It's probably not who you want to use.
Right. And if they come in a button-down Oxford shirt, that's a problem as well. I mean, because we're going to be dirty. I swear to God, I'm at a house 3 minutes, and I'm like, how am I filthy already? But it is going to happen. So, yeah, that's a great point.
Well, thank you so much, Dirk, for being with
You're
us.
welcome.
We'll put your information in the chat. If you're in Colorado, Dirk is absolutely amazing. He's a certified master inspector with DTI Property Inspections, and we've worked together, I don't even know how long, years and years. 7, 8 years.
Probably.
He does a phenomenal job. All my clients love him. They request him when they, buy and sell again. So if you're in Colorado, give him a jingle. But that was fun.
It was fun. I appreciate you because, Angela, you may not even know this. We were at this inspection. Lindsay mentioned her podcast. I'm like, you have a podcast? She's like, yeah, it's a real estate podcast. I'm like, you need to have me on. So I appreciate you letting me invite myself because I certainly did.
Absolutely. No, it's good for inspection is like the number one place where a deal will blow up. So
Right.
I'm surprised you haven't.
Especially right now.
Yes.
Right, because things have changed. So that's for sure.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, we could do this, like you said, hours and hours. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
And we will see you guys next week.
thank you.
Angela and Lindsay would love to receive your real estate referrals in Colorado. Connect with the Homegirls on social media at The Real Homegirls Podcast.